Hi, everyone. So I'm going to be talking about Shakespeare today. And so when I first started learning about Shakespeare and his works, I was really interested in his history and like who he was in the first place. Like, yes, we have a lot of we have a lot of lessons and like literature about Shakespeare's like works and the philosophy that he spreads, but no one talks about like his childhood and where he comes from. So I just want to learn more about that. So that's how my deep dive into Shakespeare conspiracies started. So, so Shakespeare is known for like a lot of famous quotes that like people go by, and some of them are here: "The world runs on wheels," and "At length the string cracks." And when I looked at these quotes, I wanted to know more about them. And when I delved deeper, I realized that these quotes weren't even made by Shakespeare in the first place. They were actually made by Sir Bacon Francis. And so I found a book that had quotes of like famous people, and there were so many like phrases that Shakespeare said that Bacon said first. And so this is one of the examples for the string. And so I wanted to know more about Sir Bacon Francis now. So did Shakespeare really do all say all the quotes and write all the plays that he did in the first place? So I wanted to first see who Sir Francis Bacon was, and as some of you might know, Francis Bacon was the Lord Chancellor in England, and he worked with the Queen, and he was famous for his philosophy, and he was part of many secret societies like the Freemasons and the Rosicrucians, and so he was very well known for his works. And so at the in the century that he was one of the most learned intellectuals. He knew many languages like Greek, Latin, and English. And English was one of the higher languages because English wasn't just one form. There were many forms of English, to the point where if someone from across the country met each other, they wouldn't understand each other. And so I wanted to know what Bacon had to do with Shakespeare for them to have so many things in common. For example, so there's a person named Delia Bacon. She has nothing to do with Sir Francis Bacon, but she was a famous philosopher also. She wrote a lot of theories about Shakespeare, and she was a lecturer on it. And later in her life, she dedicated her whole life to proving that Shakespeare was not actually Shakespeare. And the theory that she supported is called Baconian theories. And so it's basically saying that Shakespeare is just a guy that was a famous person in theater. He was a director, but he was never a playwright. And her theory was these people, and even more people that wrote philosophy and scientific theories, were the actual people that wrote Shakespearean plays. And so not only did Delia Bacon support this theory, there are many people called Baconian writers, like Harry Caldecott. He said that playwrights in the century that Shakespeare lived in, their intellectual abilities were so much lower than Shakespeare that it was near impossible for someone like Shakespeare to write the plays that he wrote. Like, their philosophy behind the Shakespearean plays, like for example Hamlet, it's so complicated that other playwrights just can't do that. So that made me curious. Why are so many famous people writing about these Baconian theories? So first of all, when you delve into Bacon's history, you find that his aim in his career is not just to spread his philosophies, but also to educate people in the modern society and westernization. And he wanted people to become united in England. So the first step to that in his mind is for people to have one common language. We wouldn't usually realize this, but English was just not as widespread. The one form of English that we know today was not as widespread as it is today. So he said that he heard a heavenly voice one night, and people say it was Athena, the Greek goddess. She said that he needs to not show his true face when he wants to achieve his goal of uniting the people through the English language. So he created this secret society called the Knights, Secret Knights, and its true name is in Greek, but he basically, him and a few writers created a secret society where they would write plays. Why would Bacon and his writers write plays when their career focused on philosophy and writing like theories? And so in this, another symbolic, thing in this secret society is that their symbol for the secret society was a helmet. And so they also called it the Helmet Society, which is basically Athena's symbol, which means shaking a spear in the face of ignorance. So that symbol meant that, shaking a spear, Shakespeare. And so that's a very distinct connection that just can't be a coincidence, as you see. And also, Shakespeare by himself, there has been no account of him writing letters to people or writing anything other than these plays. Like many famous people that you see, they usually have some kind of side career where they just like write poems on their own or they write short stories. But this guy, he never wrote anything but the plays that he wrote. This is a signature, and as you can clearly see, it looks like he can't handle a pen. Like, it's as if he's never written like a lot before. So this is, if you think that's far-fetched, this is an example of an original document of one of his plays, and look at the handwriting on that. Even though it looks messy, if you look closely, the handwriting's much different than the signature that you see here. And in Shakespeare's will, he did not have any important message in it like you would expect. One of the messages he had was to give his second best bed to his wife. That's the only thing he wanted people to know after he died, which it raises many questions. And so Shakespeare and Bacon, not only is the Baconian theory the thing that connects them two, but many writers and philosophers, they compare Bacon and Shakespeare even though they're completely different. When you really look into their philosophies, they're very similar. They both wanted westernization, and the difference between them two is Bacon wanted to, educate the people into a higher intellectual, and Shakespeare reached out to the lower class and wanted them to be related to. And so this is what Bacon wanted. He wanted to go behind a mask and educate the lower class people into integrating into the upper class. And so Shakespeare, as many of you know, Shakespeare does not have any documents to his own name. Any documents that we know today are either documents that have been translated, edited, because there was no such thing as copyright in those ages. And so the only documents we have today are heavily edited. And the most original documents that we have were put together by three of his friends, and they closed their copy of all his works with the message that basically translated to him wanting to be behind a mask and to never trust the mask of Shakespeare. And so that kind of raises the question, what's this mask? Is Shakespeare's face really Shakespeare? And that's what brought me here today, to tell you guys about how Shakespeare might not actually be Shakespeare. He might actually be Sir Francis Bacon.